Okay, here we go. All right. Good lordy. Oh, all right. Welcome to Big Red Nation take 3 now. So if anybody doesn't already know, earlier today, I did a whole stream. Never once picked up on the fact that the microphone was not coming through to the audio because I could hear it in my headphones. I was hearing myself talk in the headphones. Um, So I thought it was just going fine. To be honest, I know there's this little bar down here whenever on my side, and as I talk, it just kind of like it goes up green to show how loud it is. It never, to be honest, the first time I was doing this, never even picked up on it because I wasn't thinking to look down there because I can hear it in my headphones. So I did a whole hour-long show. Got done with it. Went to go check because I always like to go back and kind of listen and kind of see how it went. Um, so uh, see how I came off at least a little bit, kind of uh, check it out just a tad, see, make sure kind of things went well, and there was no audio. Man, I've never had that happen before. Not even like in old stuff, because like I used to have a pro wrestling YouTube channel several years ago, and never had those kind of weird problems of recording and then get done recording and find out audio was all messed up or wasn't going through. Never had that happen before. This is the first time, and man, is that devastating. Because it was a good show. Like I had some really good points, and what's frustrating is knowing that you want to do it again, but you don't know if it's going to come off as well as you thought it did the first time. Maybe some things I'm going to say is going to come off even better. I don't know, um, but I guess we'll find out. So, welcome to my what just happened, my post game shows, my review shows of what happened in the game. I'm going to go over kind of what happened in the game. I'm going to go over my thoughts of like, I jotted down some thoughts of in real time, um, thoughts of while the game was going on, what I was thinking. Then we'll go over some of my thoughts of, once I had some time to kind of let the emotion come out, kind of relax a little bit. Um, you know, uh, kind of look at it more analytically, kind of look at things in the macro of it all, not just micro of play by play and getting in. Now I had a chance to rewatch the game, listen to a lot of different podcasts and talk shows and everything else. So, kind of go over my thoughts there. We'll go over a couple of stats to help go through kind of what we thought about the game. Um, then I'm going to kind of I want to talk about kind of there's a couple things that I kept hearing over and over again while, watching different Husker podcasts, listening to different talk radio shows, and a couple things stood out to me. So I want to kind of go over that of the reaction of Husker Nation to this game. So I'm going to give my reaction to the reaction. Then I'm going to kind of talk about, what college football as a whole this whole weekend and what that kind of means on my perspective of not only this game, but this team going forward and what this means about what the season's going to look like. I'm going to spotlight Malcolm Hartzog Jr. and kind of talk about kind of in a nutshell what he did Thursday night is kind of in a nutshell what he's done his whole career. So I think that's pretty much everything. I guess I'll kind of start this off though again really quick. Just do a little touch base on the women's volleyball this weekend. Obviously, look, nobody was expecting anything really out of the Linscomb match. Hope to see some of the young players, and that's exactly what we saw, and move on. Then it was the Kentucky game. Man, that match was insane. The first two sets just did not look good, did not look in sync, really struggled. And not gonna lie, I texted my dad who was watching the game too, and I was like, I hate to say this, I just don't see them winning this. I'll keep the faith, I'll keep the hope alive, but this doesn't seem like it's their day. And then boom, reverse sweep, and just came out and had that heart of a champion and went after it. And I'm never doubting those ladies again. because I already knew like they're super talented, but sometimes things just happen, and then sometimes a team might just have your number that day, and that whatever. That doesn't mean that I still didn't think they're clearly the best team in college volleyball, but I just didn't think they were there for it. I didn't know. Not gonna doubt them ladies ever again. Wow, that was great. So just want to say that shout out to the women's volleyball. You guys killing it. What a great team to watch. All their matches all season long are going to be a lot of fun. All right. Excuse me. So let's go ahead. Let's dive on in to what just happened. Even though this is technically now like 4 days ago, 5 days ago, 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago. So what kind of just happened? Again, we'll start this off kind of giving you guys some of my thoughts on my in-game real-time thoughts. Like I said, I put these down pretty much during it or right after the game while the stuff was still fresh in my head. And my first thought overall was that this team looks the same. It looks the same as last year. The offense not really moving, the offense sputtering a lot, where it looked like they would be playing very well and moving the ball really well, and the offense looking good. And then just for whatever reason, like play call here or there, or a missed throw, or a penalty, and then boom. Even though like we really didn't have a whole lot of penalties, but but a lot of those same kind of things. Defense kind of all of a sudden randomly would get gashed. Would play very well and then would randomly get gashed. Then of course the way it ended, right? Kind of would get up to a 10-point lead, and then all of a sudden we'd let them back in and look like they were driving to kind of go win the game or at least tie it up and force an overtime, which Husker football does not do well in overtime. So here we go again, but then boom, make the play to end the game and to win it. So obviously that was a little different. But those are kind of the things I thought of, like, wow, it still looked a lot the same to me a lot. The D line. I know a lot of people are talking about how the defensive line looked like they just were not very good, not good at the run defense, weren't getting to the quarterback. What I saw was a offensive line that seemed to be out of control. What I mean by that is, they were getting there, but they weren't rushing under control. They were just kind of flying all over the place. They were very out of sorts. It was just missing assignments, not keeping the edge. It wasn't a whole lot of anything else. I just saw a defensive line that was, getting upfield, but whenever they were getting upfield, they weren't doing it under control. They're out of control. So then it'd be a lot of arm tackling, or, guys would easily go by them because they're not coming in with their heads up and paying attention to what's going on and flying to the ball. They were just kind of going guns blazing, hair on fire, and not really paying attention to being fundamentally sound in what they were doing and how they were going about it. Let's see here. Next I've got, I just kind of brought this up, and how it kind of looked the same with our offense. How it would start to look really good and it would have some momentum, and then just like, on play 8, it would start to kind of sputter. It'd be like maybe one odd play call, and then maybe then we'd have to come back and just rush it on second down and wouldn't really get any yards. So then Dylan would go to throw, and maybe the only thing that was open was an underneath route that just would be short of what the first down would be, and then we're punting again. So the offense, just to me, was very inconsistent with not being able to stack good play after good play after good play after good play and really move the ball forward and really get a drive going. And then, of course, at the end of the day, I thought we should have scored more. In my prediction, I said I thought we'd win 38-17. And I still think we could have gotten close to that, because if you remember, I also mentioned I thought it was going to be really tight, close, probably taking it into the second quarter, and then maybe Nebraska make a play right before half and then be able to kind of come out in the second half with adjustments and kind of pull away. Maybe never look like it's like this insane beatdown, but we would pull away enough that it would look like a good victory. 38-17, I kind of thought was where it would be. Well, I got the 17 part correct. I just didn't get the 38. And you look at that Luke Lindemeyer play right there at the goal line that he didn't get in, right? He got down to the 1. Look, still overall good play, right? Great play. But whenever you're that close to the end zone, man, you got to, if you smell the end zone, you got to get in. You got to get in. You can smell the end zone, you got to get in. Whenever I was talking about this, whenever I was doing the show earlier today, as soon as I talked about smelling the end zone, you got to get in, it sparked a quote in my head because, like I said, I grew up kind of away from Lincoln. So I would always get for Christmas, birthdays, whatever, I always ask for Husker stuff, right? As much Husker stuff as I could get. So my grandfather would always get us media guides. He would even like just gift us. I mean, these wouldn't be like paid gifts that he would get us, but he would just always bring down, like if they were visiting us, he would just bring down Journal Star clippings and papers or Husker illustrated stuff or whatever. But then also it'd be all those like old highlight tapes. And made me think of the 94 4 straight Big 8 video. I'm pretty sure it was in that one. It might have been in the 95 one, but I'm pretty sure it was 94. And it came from Cluster Johnson. I guess, to be honest, I could have researched that before I redid this show, but had other things to do. But anyway, but I know it's Cluster Johnson. I know this was the quote, and I don't remember the game that it was or anything like that. But Cluster Johnson was talking about this run that he had. And, it was one of those tough runs, kind of broke several tackles, had a guy that he drug into the end zone. And he said, and I could feel the guy coming, starting to bring me down, but I happened to look up and I could see the goal line. So my eyes got real wide. And then, I just told myself, he got to come with me. And that's how it is. Cause that guy was totally draped all over Luke Lindemeyer. So I get it. He's out there trying to get you down just as much, but that's where you got to find that second gear, that second oomph, that second, never say die, that he got to come with me. He can take me down. That's fine. He's going to take me down, but it's going to be in that end zone, not 1 yard short. Because then what happened was, right, very next play, Elijah Pritchard, false start. And that's kind of also goes to my other point of it started to look the same. Man, during the game, I was very mad at that point whenever he got that false start and it's not on Elijah because guys are going to false start as much as you prepare not to do that stuff. It will happen from time to time. There are so many different things at play that happen during a game that sometimes it will happen. But here's why I got so mad during that game and why I say this part helped remind me of the ways things haven't necessarily changed. In Matt Rule's first year going into the first game, I believe it was during game week. So that week going into that first game or of those practices, he was asked about Anthony Grant. And Anthony Grant, he said, he's right now he's third and he's on this place in his depth chart because he's been having fumble issues. So then for whatever reason, during a very crucial part of that Minnesota game, Anthony Grant is being given carries where what does he do? He fumbles the ball. So now here we are 2 years later during game week, the depth chart comes out during game week, those practices during game week. He comes out on a press conference and mentions, well, Pritchard's where he's at right now because of it's not off the field issues. He doesn't have any of that. It's in game. Sometimes he might miss a block, but also he's been having a lot of false starts. So here we are. I believe at this point it was tied 3-3. So we're in a very crucial spot of the game. I know it's early, but it's still crucial. Whenever it's a tight game and it's in the second quarter, to me, that's crucial. So then you go put in the guy that you said have been making mental mistakes in the game and in a crucial spot to get into the end zone, he false starts. He does the thing you said has been keeping him out of the game, or out of the starting spot at least. To me, and we'll go over this many times whenever I start talking about the macro stuff and how I feel about the game with emotion out, but emotion in and emotion out. Those type of coaching decisions I do question. I get, look, you want to give the kid a chance to prove that, he's not going to do this. Maybe in the game, he's a little more focused, this, and this. And that is fine. Have him do that whenever we're up 13-0. Have him do that whenever we're up 13-3. We're on the goal line. It's 3-3. Say, hey, Gunner, get in. Comes off the field. Sorry, Elijah. Listen, right now this is too crucial. We'll give you your shot to prove that you're not going to be false starting later on in the game. But right now, we can't take that chance. I mean, you say, Matt says him and the coaches are always very, very upfront and honest with the kids. Okay, that's a great time to still be honest with the kids. So that part really got me. But that's all how I felt emotionally about the game, right? So let's say we score that touchdown there. Okay, but boom, right there, there's more points. If we would have came out at half with the ball again and scored on that first drive, I think we do pull away. And then I do think we get closer to that 38-17 style victory. But again, it is week one. And I get things don't go perfect week one. But those are my in-game emotional thoughts. Some of my thoughts, though, now, once we step back, take the emotion out of it, really be able to watch this game for a second time and look at it a little more analytically. Like I said, whenever I said that this game just seemed it to be more of the same. Well, now that I was able to rewatch it again and look at stats, I think this game reminded me a ton of the Iowa game last year. And let me show you guys how here. Let me share my screen. We'll look at some stats here. All right. Let me make sure that, okay, yeah, you can see me. All right. Let's go to, right now we're looking at individual stats. Let's go to team stats here. We dominated, right? So we got 23 first downs to 16. Not only did we get to 18 third downs, we converted in 10 of them. They only converted 30% of theirs. Okay. Fourth down efficiency. We were 50%. Here's something I think we do need to clean up, period. I don't care what type of team we're playing against. We cannot let a team go 100% on fourth downs. Total yardage, I wouldn't say a total domination, but we did do better. We definitely dominating passing yards. Here's the one that we didn't, right? The rushing. Penalties, we did better. We had 0 turnovers, and they had 2. Time of possession, we almost doubled them. Reminds me a ton of the Iowa game from last year. All right, but here's the thing. So with that rushing attack, there we go. Sorry. With that rushing attack, Sorsby, 13 carries for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was their offense. I mean, that was their offense. And look, we're going to face other quarterbacks that are at least athletic, agile, can do some things. I don't think we're going to face another quarterback that is run first like a Brendan Sorsby. I just don't. So let me go ahead and click back off there. All right. I just don't think we're going to see another quarterback like a Brandon Sorsby that is very run first, run heavy guy. So again, when going back to the defensive line thing that I was talking about, Go back and watch. None of our guys were really getting like blown off the ball, and that's why I don't think it's a size issue. A lot of people want to keep going back to our defensive line is very small, and it's smaller, for sure. But we don't have like a bunch of 5'7", 5'8", 210-pound guys out there. Like we've got some athletes and some strong dudes. We still have some nice sized guys. They're a little undersized for sure. But they're not like small. But I didn't really see a ton of guys getting pushed back. There's maybe one player or two where guys got caught being out of position, like I was talking about, and then maybe got pushed back a little. But there was no just like straight up, their offensive line just mowed us over, like pushing us back. That was not happening. Um, like I said, what was happening was I think a lot of guys that had a little bit of confusion, first time all playing together, um, in a game situation. So therefore, you don't really know in game like what their technique is, where they're going. Sometimes guys just get out of sorts in a live game instead because it's not practice. So they kind of lose track because they're just more now focused about making the play. Um, rather than doing their job. A lot of these guys are young. So not only is this their first game together, this is kind of their first game, period. So there's a lot of different things going on. Um, I think also Terry Braden coming from the NFL, never, from what I can remember, I don't think has really ever coached in college ball at any level for any period of time. I'm not sure. But definitely not in the last. I think he was with the Chiefs the last 9 years or something like that. So definitely nothing, not anytime soon. Probably doesn't have a whole lot of experience defending run first quarterbacks like a Sorsby. Like yes, you can say, well, what about Lamar Jackson or some of these other guys? Yes, there are running quarterbacks in the NFL, no doubt, but not again. Even Lamar, as bad ass of a runner as he is, he's not a run first quarterback. He's not I'm only running the ball to set up maybe a fake and throw it a little bit. Right? Like he's not that kind of quarterback either. He's a quarterback that if you don't pay attention, he's going to burn you and he's going to take it to the house for sure. So, I think that had a little bit to do with it too, right? Like the coaching going into the game probably didn't prepare the guys as well as they could have been if he had more experience facing these type of guys and knowing how to attack. Because that's how it came off to me. Like I said, they came off as very out of control. Feeling like they were too worried about what he could or couldn't do instead of just being aggressive and attacking Sorsby. Because again, you look at just the running game itself, the handoff runs. Yeah, there were still some big runs, but overall, it wasn't like crazy, right? At the end of the day, we still only allowed 17 points to a power 4 team with two really good running backs, a tight end that is going to be a first or second rounder at some point. Okay. Like they've got some athletes. They do have some really good players on that side of the ball. And we kept them to 17 points. Again, we had a good game plan and we executed it for the most part. I think there's some things that could have gotten cleaned up for sure. And that's what's going to happen. Hopefully, that's what I would expect to happen from this coaching staff is that this stuff to get cleaned up and these guys to get better. Now there's stuff on film that they can watch. It's not practice. It's going up against an actual opponent that they can see how they did in game and they can move forward and hopefully get better. Let's see here. Some of my other macro thoughts, if you will. This was a big thing, obviously, because even the way the end of the game happened, right? So whenever certain things would happen, penalties, things didn't go our way, which didn't happen a whole lot. But whenever these certain things happen, like I said, I'm a member of the I-80 club, and they went over groin kicks. So I sat there and listened to all their groin kick chronicle episodes. And so a lot of the things that would happen that would be known as a groin kick game, you knew you were heading that way. You would get a random phantom call or calls would not go your way. a turnover in a terrible situation, right? At the wrong time of the game. There's never a good time for a uh, turnover, but there's certain parts where they're even worse. Um, offense has a chance to close something out and they can't get it done. Um, defense has a chance to shut them down and they can't get it done. Things like this all start to happen, and usually that has set our team out of the game. And some of those points that I bring up is at one point in the second quarter, going into half, um, after Archie Wilson uh, pinned them deep inside the 10, they start driving. Now, on the third down, I think it was Sorsby that scrambled. We stopped him a good yard or a half a yard short. And without even hesitation, the ref comes in and he even spotted him short. Like, he even was spotting him short, but then just set the ball down, started going, yep, first down, move the chain. How did we not stop and review that? But nobody started panicking. Nobody started getting mad, started getting on the refs. They just lined back up. And the very next play, Vincent Shavers knocks it out, and we get the fumble. We recover, and then we ended up going in and scoring before half. Another situation even earlier in the game, Henry Lutowski gets a personal foul call. I think it was a little bit of BS. He didn't do much. You know, it was super ticky-tacky. He maybe bumped him, maybe didn't, kind of was short. I think the guy way oversold it from Cincinnati. He drew the flag, good on him. But, again, you didn't see this, like, everybody freaking out, getting mad, and then it totally derailed everything. Now, we didn't really move the ball much after that, but it didn't take us out for a longer period of time, because whenever we came back out and we kept moving the ball and defense came out, did all their stuff. At the end of the game, offense couldn't close it out. Defense now has kind of got their backs against the wall. They even kind of screwed up a little bit. Hartzog with the holding penalty. Again, he himself, it didn't let him get him down. He stayed focused. He stayed in the game. And the very next play, he went out and got that game-winning interception. The mentality of the whole team, I think, is starting to change. And you can tell we were getting reviews that were so close that really could have gone either way, go our way. And past years, they weren't going our way. Those two reviews on Isaiah's touchdown and that fumble recovery easily would have gone against us and screwed us. Easily. This time they didn't. Dylan, unfortunately, threw a ball that probably should have been a pick six, and it didn't. Dylan's fumble, it bounced our way, went right back to him, and he was able to recover it. And I'm a big believer in you make your own luck. If you have a winning mentality, if you have expectations that you're going out there and you're going to win the game instead of, hoping to win or trying not to lose, I think that's how you help things go your way. You know what I'm saying? Like, the balls will start bouncing your way with belief. That's one of the things that always frustrated me about Scott Frost's time here. Every post game or during post practice press conferences or whatever, how many times did he say, "Oh, we're just kind of snake bitten. We're just kind of waiting for things to start going our way." You can't wait for it. You got to make it happen. And sometimes it's just mentality. Now, sometimes it in the reality of the situation, does just because you believe it mean things are going to go your way? Not necessarily. But I also don't think it's a coincidence that because you have a certain mentality about yourself, those things do start going your way. So I do think to a little bit that they are correlated. I do think there's some interconnection there. And I think this team is starting to do that. I really do. I mean, making that play at the end of the game, whenever really in your spats, and probably that whole stadium of fans is going, "Oh, here we go again. We're gonna lose this game. We're gonna lose. We're gonna lose." The players on the field said, "Nah, we're gonna win. And we're gonna go take this ball away," and they did it. So that was a huge thing for me. And to be honest, I think that is going to be a huge thing for the rest of the season. For it to happen in game one against another Power Four team, and a team that I think is actually going to end up being pretty good. Um, do I think they're like going to win the Big 12? No, but I think he might finally Satterfield. I think could finally take this team to a bowl game and maybe even win a bowl, depending on who they're facing. I think they're gonna have a pretty good season. They're gonna have a good fighting season. Um, look at came out today the lines for next week's games, and I think they have Cincinnati as a 20-point favorite against their opponent. I want to say it's Bowling Green. Again, I know it's just Bowling Green, but hey, a 20 to be a 20-point favorite against a team, that okay. So they might be actually really good. Hey guys, we got special teams, huh? All right, we got a kicker and a punter. All right, Kyle Cunanan knocking in a 52-yarder. Not only was that the longest field goal we've seen in a long time, that was his longest kick ever. That was his first kick for Nebraska in Arrowhead Stadium, a packed house, and he was able to knock in a 52-yarder. Knocked in 2 field goals for us. One thing also that I liked, whenever we had 2 not so great kickoffs from John Hall, Mike Eckler went, "Okay, Kyle, you're going back out there now. Now you're going to kick off too. You just missed 2 kickoffs. You're sitting with me." So, hey, yeah, we still have a great special teams coordinator that's going to be out there making the decisions to make sure that we have the best people out there doing what they need to do. Archie Wilson, pinning him deep inside the 10 twice, and both times in very important parts of the game at the end of the first half, which, like I said, ended up being in our favor. We were able to cause a turnover deep in the territory, turn it around, go score right before half and go up 10. The end of the game, offense took a lot of time off the clock, but we're unable to just get any points or fully ice the game. Needed a big punt out of him. He punted it down, dropped him inside the 10. If it's to the 20 or to the 30-yard line, guess what? Now they're a lot closer. So maybe we don't get that interception, because now the way that they're playing is much different. Now that huge run, that busted play that Sorsby ran up the middle and got that huge gain on, that gets them into field goal range even further. That maybe they just then run out the clock and kick a field goal. Maybe they don't throw the ball. So both those punts were huge. There's still some work to do. I think, whenever you send people to go make a block, you're hoping you can get there. I don't think either one of them, they got even necessarily that close to blocking whenever we sent a punt block in. I'd like to see them do better at setting up Jacory to get a good return. Whenever you are going for a block, you're obviously not setting up for a return. So I'm very interested to see what Jacory Barney can do, but hey, our special teams are at least good. Can they end up being great this year? I think so. I think things can only get better in that realm, barring injury. But I think I do. I think our special teams going to be good this year. I think it's going to help us a lot. And clearly, I think it's one of the deciding factors on why we won this game and we didn't see the groin kick style game come to fruition. I think it was huge in this victory, and it's going to be huge going forward for the season. Let's see here. I think so. One of the other macro things is, we a lot of people were talking about the lack at the running back rotation and some of these other things. I think the next 2 weeks, it's very important that we get as many young guys in as possible. And I'm not just talking about, hey, get the starters in, score a bunch of points, get them out, get in the backups. I'm talking about get those guys in with the first team, get those rotations going early. Um, I think getting them in these next 2 games, which they are going to be clearly inferior opponents. Let's not kid ourselves. Look, anything can happen on any given Saturday. Obviously, you don't want to take them for granted. And, I'm not saying I hope that the coaches are expressing to the players during prep work that, hey, this team's a nobody. So screw it. We're just going to kind of work on us. I'm just speaking specifically as a fan, talking about this analytically. I hope that they do as much just work on ourselves as possible in these next 2 games to get these guys experience, to get these guys some game time experience, to get them confidence, um, get them out there finally really kind of getting muscle memory worked out. So it is just playing football now, not thinking of the stage, not thinking of the um, level that they're playing against, thinking about the plays. Just go out there and play. Do what you've been practicing, go do what you've been training, all summer and fall long, or if they were here during spring long as well. Matt Rule has talked about this a lot of, these guys are good, they're talented, they just need to go play ball. They don't need to go play football. And hopefully in these next 2 games, we should be able to do a lot of scoring and be so much better that the game should never feel close or out of hand. And we should be able to get these guys in to start playing some football and gain that confidence, gain that experience. I think it's super crucial over these next 2 weeks to get us ready for conference play in Michigan being the first one of them. Um, that's just kind of my thought. But speaking of the running back rotation, I'm going to go into my next segment here and talk about my reaction to everybody's reaction to a lot of the different things. And really, there were 2 points. There were really 2 points that stuck out to me after watching so many different podcasts and the talk radio shows and all these analysts on national and local, but mostly local because, national guys, they're just kind of get their talking points to kind of watch some highlights and they're going to say what they're going to say. But, Husker Nation, and specifically the Husker Nation that lives online, we like to pride ourselves with not only just being the greatest fans in college football, but the most intelligent, well-informed fans in college football. Because, we love to just digest content, coach interviews, the cinema recap stuff, the behind the scenes shows, the 5,000 podcasts and YouTube channels that we have, all the talk radio shows, right? And we try to just take in all this information. But I feel sometimes like, yeah, we take it all in, but then we never like digest it. Like we never really listen, maybe. Because the one thing, like I said, was Dylan Raiola. We saw those stats, right? He was 33 for 42, threw the ball for 78% completion percentage. But he only had like a 5.1 or 5.2 yards per play or something like that throwing the ball. And so everybody's complaining, oh, why didn't we ever throw the ball down the field? Man, why are we so scared to throw the ball down the field, make a play, stretch the field? Well, come to find out, because we can't really see a lot of this type of stuff on TV, right? You need the full 22 to see the whole field and see what actually is being played. And Cincinnati's game plan was play the 3 high safeties that are playing off the ball. They're playing their linebackers deep. You keep everything right in front of you. Play off the ball. You play zone, which kind of forces you to dink and dunk and kind of take what the defense gives you. Well, again, We love to watch all these things, but I don't think we fully listen. Dana Holgerson in several press conferences said, well, he's really been teaching Dylan to take what the defense gives you, do the routine thing, make the routine play, right? It's okay to dink and dunk, right? You can never go broke making a profit. That's what Michael Severe likes to say, right? Now, yes, would I have liked to see some push it a little bit more? Of course. But again, sometimes I think we're a little misguided on what we're talking about. It's not necessarily the Dylan problem. Dylan was making the right plays. He's doing the right thing. But whenever he gets the ball into the wide receiver's hands or the running back's hands on the drop offs or crossing routes or underneath routes or whatever, now it's on them to go make a play, make a guy miss and go make a play. You know, it's something that Matt Rule's been talking about. He wants to see from his guys pretty much ever since he's been here. Hey, we need a guy that can go make a play. That can take a 5-yard gain into a 15, 20-yard gain. And that's what needs to happen. Catch the ball, boom, boom. Now, I will say this. There's a couple times where I thought Dylan kind of underthrew it a little bit. That just allowed them to then catch it in stride and go make a play, juke somebody, break a tackle, and go off. But for the most part, he does hit them right, and they got to make a play. If you catch the ball and you get it, don't go down right away. Go make a play. Get going. And hopefully, eventually, that will get going as they, again, play in a game more together. Outside of Jacory, a lot of his wide receivers have not played in a game with them. Playing in practice, again, it's very different. You get very different looks whenever it's mostly just thud. Again, it's just very different. So hopefully just, again, repetition will allow this to open up. It's, again, a thing that Dana has mentioned. This offense, it's about making plays. It's about getting the ball to your playmakers and letting them go and break it and make a big play. So until they make a big play, you're not going to see big yardage plays. Sometimes you do need to stretch it, and you'll get that because here's the thing. Cincinnati knows that their secondary is not great. Again, their secondary now this year is super new, also first time playing together. So they weren't going to allow the cheap, guys get beat and just throw it down the field and do all that type of stuff. They're going to, force you to beat them slowly and hope that eventually play after play after play after play after play, you're going to make a mistake. And that's what they were hoping for. And the fact that we really didn't, that I think that speaks volumes for where our team is at. Now, whenever you play a defense that has a little more confidence in who their players are, who their athletes are, they're gonna challenge you a little bit more. And then that's whenever our athletes can go up against their athletes one-on-one, make a little play, boom, 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 and go. Now it allows their defense to possibly make a mistake. And then we got to capitalize on it. So again, I'm not saying that, their defense and their secondary, the way that they played it is unpenetrable, if I said that right. But at the same time, I want a quarterback that if a defense is going to give you underneath all day long, then we're just going to keep slowly moving the ball all day long, and we're going to keep moving the ball. We're not going to all of a sudden have a jump ball and possible interception or this, and this. I'd much rather see a quarterback that's going to take his open spots and just move the ball that way. The other thing is the running back situation. I can't remember how many years in a row now we've had this kind of running back by committee situation rotation going, and you hear fans and talking heads talk all the time about, man, I really wish they could just settle in on a guy and let him run and get going and find a rhythm and this, and this. And then here we are, game one. And Emmett has 25 carries, gets 7 receptions. And, he was in the game quite a bit. And everybody's talking about how, well, this isn't sustainable. You can't just give him all these carries. What? look, let's not turn into a fan base that's just going to get mad about everything and be not happy about everything. We finally get somebody that they went, hey, you know what? He had the hot hand and let's go. And you know what? I just got done watching Matt Rule's press conference from today. And that's what he said. He said, look, I wish I would have seen the other two play more, but it was Dana's call. And Dana thought Emmett had the hot hand and that's who he wanted to roll with. That seems like the right explanation. You know, that's who he decided to roll with. And I'm okay with that. If maybe later on, you know, we play a certain style of defense that Emmett's just kind of struggling against because it kind of, you know, it takes away his strengths. Okay, well, maybe a speedier back like Isaiah or Mackay work out better. Or maybe we need to go true bruiser and go with a much bigger back like I don't know, Vincent Genatone or Connor Booth or Quentin Ives. And I don't even know how close those guys are to even playing being an option, but I'm just trying to pick running backs that are very different than Emmett. And so, you know, after that, it could change. You know, again, it's game one. A lot of things can change from, you know, I love going back and rewatching games, like I said, like on YouTube. And you go back and watch the game ones of the year, sometimes even the first 2 or 3 games of the year, and the starting lineup or anything just looks entirely different from the team that you remember, because you usually remember the team the most that was kind of like mid-season through the end of the year. And just the lineup, how many of the lineups are different, whether it be due to injury, due to just players not being as good as we thought, guys deciding mid-season that they were going to transfer, you know, stuff like that. People, you know, just getting into trouble, so then they don't like. So I'm never going to overreact to a game one. In game, yes, I'll get emotional and think about the game and blah, 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 you know, of course. But the weekend after or the week after leading into game two, I'm not going to sit here and like think that this is just how the team's going to be now, because that's not going to be the case. The guys are going to continue to get better, continue to develop. And especially whenever we have a young team like this, guys are just going to kind of blossom and things are just kind of click for people at different times. And certain opportunities are going to come around and some people will capitalize on it. So things will change. So, you know, again, just the reactions of different people. And it was funny too, because, you know, I'm in the middle of literally writing this about the quarterback thing. And I happen to be watching the Cornhusker Chronicles or Cornhusker Counseling by No Block, No Rock that I think they did it on Saturday morning. And Mike Delaware starts almost saying like word for word what I'm putting down in my notes. So I was like, okay, all right. So there have been a couple people that have understood and kind of figured this out. You know, he brought up the fact that, you know, Tom Brady is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not the greatest. He was always known as the dink and dunker, the guy that just kind of methodically moves the ball. I'm not saying that's Dylan, but, you know, look, the greats will do this. So let's not get mad that Dylan and our offense decided to just take what the defense gave us and dink and dunk and move the ball down the field like that. Every game's going to be different. Everything will change. Okay, let's go ahead and touch up on Malcolm Hartzog Jr. I wanted to spotlight him, obviously, because he made the play of the game to win us the game. But I was just kind of, whenever he got done with that, just to take you back to that game and in the moment of the game, that drive, you know, he, just because of his size and lack thereof, you know, they completed a ball where it like just went past his fingertips and they kept moving the ball. Then he had that defensive holding penalty. And then I saw him sitting there like, why does he play so much? Why is he in the game? Get him out of the game. Like just purely due to his size. Like, good Lord. Like how many times are we going to let him continue to uh, let us lose games and lose battles and all this stuff. And then very next play, boom, there he is with the interception. And I went, yeah, that is in a nutshell his career. That has been his career. Last year, he was our leader in interceptions. His freshman year came on the scene and killed it. Had 4 interceptions that year. Dude, at the end of the day, will just make plays. He allows a lot of plays too, though. And it's not due to anything besides the fact of his lack of size. This dude is a great football player. He's very intelligent. He's a hard player or hard worker. He hustles like a dude is super good. He really is. Like if he was like 6'1" instead of like 5'8", if he was like 6'1", 2'5", 210, I think he could be a dude that's talked about nationally, and on a lot of draft boards. But he's like 5'7", 5'8", 175 pounds. And he plays in the Big Ten. So a lot of guys are just going to outsize him. Yeah, he can still jump, but so can these other guys. So, they're always going to be able to put a ball where he can't get to it. But at the same time, he makes plays. Well, there are plenty of times where he makes plays. Do we have as many turnovers in a season if he's not on the field? I don't know. Because he's, again, the leader in interceptions last year. So sometimes, he is the talk of a lot of people after games. Because of the fact that, yes, I mean, like the game that sticks out in my head big time last year was that USC game. Why ever in the world he's on Deuce Robinson makes zero sense. But at the same time, then he's out there making plays. I think he had an interception in that USC game too. I can't remember now, but yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that. And, that thought crossed my mind almost instantly after the game was done is, yeah, that's his career in a nutshell. That whole drive was his career in a nutshell. Frustrating. And you feel bad because he's putting his heart out there. Like, he's playing his hardest, but just the lack of size, it kills him. It kills him until it doesn't. And then all of a sudden he makes a play and then you're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. All right, let's get into the weekend that was in college football and kind of use that as a good comparison to what we saw Thursday night. So going into that Texas-Ohio State game, I couldn't wait for that game. I thought it was going to be really good. But I wasn't quite sure really what I was going to see from these two teams. And kind of all day long, I was kind of texting back and forth with my brother. And he mentioned before the game started, he's like, what I'm the most excited about this game is to see these two young quarterbacks, Julian Sayin and Arch Manning, and see how they do. Because then I want to use that as comparison to what we see from Dylan. And, because they're all 5-star quarterbacks, they're all young. See if kind of what we have in Dylan. If he plays as well, if not, or better than what these two guys are doing, maybe we got something. Maybe we do have a legit first-round quarterback that can maybe blow up and do some things for us and take us to championships. And I told him, I was like, yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm like, but yeah, I just don't know what to expect out of this game because, to be honest, I don't know if either one of these teams are going to be ranked in the top 10 by the end of the year. And my reasoning for that is look at Ohio State. They lost a ton of guys. They lost their starting quarterback, both their starting running backs, one of their wide receivers, if not two of their wide receivers, a ton of guys off of that defense, both coordinators. And then they're just ranked number 3 the very next year. Like, I get it. Ohio State is known as a program that can reload. But reload to be a top 5 team again? I don't know. That's a lot of people that they lost. They lost a lot of people that we've not heard of, these younger guys. Usually we've heard of at least a little bit of the younger guys that are filling in. And we don't really know these guys. It's kind of the same thing for Texas. Now, for them, they had a quarterback that, to be honest with you guys, I have not seen a whole lot from Arch Manning to suggest that he was going to be the Heisman Trophy winner this year and take Texas to being the number one team in the country. Okay. They also lost a lot of guys from that team from a year ago. And one of the things about one of the biggest reasons why I'm not a huge believer in Arch Manning, not saying that he's never going to be a good quarterback or that he's not going to be a quarterback that could be a first round pick or whatever, but not this year, is because for 2 years in a row, he couldn't beat out a quarterback that was also not necessarily like blowing people away and was like, what, a 5th or 6th, 7th round draft pick? So you're telling me the guy that you think is going to be the Heisman Trophy winner after not playing, like extent of time, was also a guy that couldn't beat out Quinn Ewers. Okay. Hey, we'll see. And then he proceeds to kind of prove me right. Now, he had a couple good drives there at the very end of the game as they were kind of coming back. He kind of looked like maybe he started feeling a little more comfortable, but to me, both quarterbacks looked like the stage was too big for him to start off. And again, the announcers of the game really kind of try to put out that narrative like, oh, this is a great defensive battle. Was it though? Because I don't even think neither defense looked dominant. It looked like the two offenses couldn't get anything going. So after watching that game, I didn't think I saw two teams that were two top 3 teams in the nation. But again, that's what happens with preseason polls. So I remember after the game, I texted my brother back and I said, hey, do you think you watch this game? Do you think either one of these teams are that much better than Nebraska? And he said, no, I don't think they're that much better than Nebraska. Maybe we got a better team than what I was thinking after Thursday. And I went, yeah, I think so too. It's week 1. Week 1 games are tough, man. They're kind of like bowl games. You have all this time off. It's just a ton of practicing. Some teams get up. Some teams get 2 up. Some teams think that their opponent week 1 is nothing, and they're just going to roll over them. Maybe they got a bigger name opponent the next week that they'd rather go play or are thinking about more often, or, whatever the case may be. Those week 1 games are tricky. Last year, Oregon almost got beat by Idaho, and then Oregon went on to continue to be a very dominant number 1 team in the country. And, unfortunately had to face Ohio State that was just on a heater in the playoffs. But, nobody started writing them off like, well, nope, they're a terrible team. They went on and did some things. So, and then you look around the country this year, a bunch of stuff were just, poor Kansas State, probably should have lost North Dakota. Indiana struggled with Old Dominion. I mean, Iowa struggled with Albany to start. Mark Gronowski or whatever his name is. Oh my gosh. Some people were talking about Arch Manning had a throw that looked like Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. Mark Gronowski had a whole game where he looked like Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. That dude, he was bad. Maybe it was just week 1. Again, let's not overtake. I'm not going to also overanalyze other teams' week 1s. But, it is what it is. Alabama looked like garbage. They did not look like a top 15 team, let alone be a top 8 team. I mean, maybe you get some of the guys that they were missing on defense back. Maybe they have a little bit better looking defense, but that offense, poor Ryan Williams, man. He's got nobody around him. And that quarterback, that Ty Simpson, does not look good. He looked he really struggled with a lot of stuff. And, to be honest with you, I don't think Florida State necessarily looked like world beaters either. Tommy Castanelis or whatever his name is, he looked pretty good. He did. Now with some athletes around him, he looked pretty good. But at the same time, the defense, the Tony White defense, they were flying around. They looked pretty good. But, you look at that first drive, and even whenever Alabama was starting to come back, they were starting to come back because they were converting on third downs. And we saw this as Husker fans. I personally do believe that Tony White struggles with calling defenses on conversion downs. Um, you know, I think I'm not saying like he's not a good defensive coordinator. I think he is. I'd still be happy if he was still our defensive coordinator, but sometimes coaches have that one thing that's a little bit of a flaw. And a little bit of a flaw for Tony White is I think he struggles with knowing what to call on conversion downs, especially conversion downs that maybe are a little bit trickier, not knowing what that offense could call, like the medium to long range conversion downs, like a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 13. Because, Alabama would convert those. They wouldn't convert necessarily the 4th and 1 or the 3rd and 3. Because you could really kind of bow up and go after guys. But the further range ones, you kind of struggled. So that's something with Tony White. So I don't know if Florida State's going to necessarily just flip the world and be on fire. But since they're Florida State, I guarantee after this weekend, whenever the rankings come out, they'll probably be ranked they'll go from unranked to probably 16th or 15th in the nation. Just because. But again, that kind of goes back to my first episode where I had that rant about preseason polls and how the SEC gets all these, this benefit of the doubt stuff. But I think especially after watching this weekend of college football, it kind of came to me and I kind of had this idea of, I think a lot of people talked about having more uniformity in college football, especially now with the SEC now agreeing to go to 9 conference games. I just say, okay, I think there might be, is it the ACC or the Big 12 that still only play 8? I think it might be the ACC. Let's just get all the Power 4 to play 9 conference games, right? Let's just go ahead, finish that off, get them all. Because right now in the world of the transfer portal, right, and then the extended playoffs of 12 teams, and then looks like, here in a couple of years we'll go to 16. And the world of that, number one, with transfer portal, we don't know what a team looks like year after year. There's way too much change. Okay. Even though we might know what the players did at a previous school or whatever, still, you don't know what the team looks like anymore year to year. So you can't kind of give them a preseason rank because you know what they got returning, some freshmen that might be stepping in. Back then you would have a better handle on what you're getting out of that team coming into the season. But now with that on top of playoff football, an extended playoff that a lot of teams can get into, I think personally you set the uniformity at this. I think it needs to come from the College Football Playoff Committee, because I think right now they're kind of the ones that kind of could control some of this stuff and just say the first 3 weeks are non-conference only. Don't have people playing conference games week 1, week 2, whatever, and then having a non-conference game week 11. No more of that. Your first 3 weeks are non-conference games. Or non-conference. That play teams that are out of conference. Now, however they decide that schedule should go, hey, I don't necessarily care. If you're a team that wants to play 3 FCS schools, whatever. Now that's going to affect your ranking, but do what you want to do. But starting week 4 starts conference games. And the week leading into that conference week, that's where the first rankings come out. Because then you can watch the first 3 weeks of the season and really decide, hey, without the perception to change, to kind of give you a narrative on what you think you're watching. You're just watching football games. You're just watching teams play ball. How do they look with the eye test? Do these guys look good? Do they look athletic? Do they look dominant? Are they making plays? Because I'll tell you right now, I think LSU looked really good. I even think Clemson looked pretty good. I think Miami, actually, surprisingly, I didn't think they were going to look good coming in. I thought they looked pretty good last night. I think, oh gosh, now I'm losing my train of thought here. Trying to think of the rest of the games. I think Oregon looked pretty good. I think gosh, now I'm losing my mind. Sorry. Again, this is what sucks about doing a second take. Now I'm like forgetting all these things. Hold on. Let's look up something real quick. All right. Da-da-da, da-da-da. All right, yeah. So, I thought Penn State, I think, is clearly that's the team I was trying to think of. Penn State, I think, is clearly the best team in college football right now. After watching the game, I know it was just against Nevada, but they did what they needed to do. They dominated. They looked like the much better team by a long shot. Um, Georgia, I thought looked pretty decent. Um, Florida, again, I wasn't expecting them to look that good, and I know they're playing against Long Island, but again, they did what they needed to do, 55 to nothing. Um, Oklahoma looked pretty decent. Ole Miss looked pretty good. Iowa State looks really good. Iowa State's a team that's looking pretty darn good. But that's about kind of the only ones that I thought went okay, okay. Um, like I said, as far as like who I would think would be in my like top five, um, those are the teams that I think if you didn't have this preconceived notion on who already is the top five teams, and you just looked at how they played, how well they gelled, who's making plays, all that type of stuff. I think those are some of the teams that I think should be up there. And I think it would make it more fun year to year. You don't know who's going to be up there. You don't know who's just going to kind of get this special treatment of the benefit of the doubt. And like I said, towards the end of that Texas Ohio State game, Gus Johnson and Joel Klatz just talking about, oh wow, what a great defensive battle this was. Well, but was it? I go back to that, but was it? I don't know. You look at teams like A&M. Like they looked okay, but UTSA scoring 24 points on them. Is that defense really going to be all that good? Like I said, Indiana, damn near. I think they scored late to really pull it away, but at one point it was 14-20 in like the third or fourth quarter. They only won 27-14 to Old Dominion. Like that. I mean, these are some teams that, you didn't even realize had a football program. Like, SMU. Yeah, I mean, they kind of took care of business against East Texas A&M. Michigan, they did pull away. They kind of kept pulling away a little bit, and the game never really fully felt like in dire. But at the same time, New Mexico did kind of keep it close at certain points in that game. Like I said, just different teams played well, but a lot of teams kind of struggled. So, looking at that and comparing that to how Nebraska looked against a Power 4 team in Cincinnati, I'm not necessarily too worried about where our team is and where I think they're going to be at in the Big 12 or Big 12 in the Big 10 and where they could be at nationally. I'm not coming off of my 10-2 record prediction. I still think this team could do that. I just think that they got to clean up some things. They got to go out and play some football, settle in on a left tackle. And I personally, after watching that game, I think it should be Gunnar Gatula. I think he played the best overall. If eventually Elijah Pritchard can fix some of the mental stuff, I think then, yeah, he should probably be the left tackle. I think he is much bigger and much more athletic than Gunnar, but I think Gunnar is much better fundamentally right now. So I would probably go with Gunnar for a while, with maybe Elijah then being the swing tackle and coming in for Prohaska to give him rest here or there, and coming in and giving Gunnar a rest here or there. Or then come in if we go jumbo packages and come in as that third tackle. Can't wait to see. Unfortunately, the terrible news from today's press conference: Janarian Bonner, torn ACL, out for the year. And he mentioned, it's time for Carter Nelson to step up. And I hope so. I can't wait to see him really step up and do some things. Keenan Smith. Can't wait to see what Keelan Smith can do. These next 2 weeks are going to be, I think and hope, going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see a lot of young guys, hopefully, and hopefully they'll make some plays and really develop that confidence and experience that we need from them for the rest of the season. So yeah, so I'll do my Akron preview show on Friday night. Probably be around like 8, 9 o'clock, I think. Just kind of depends on one, we kind of get the little one settled down and get his nighttime done and kind of get him to bed. So he's not running around. My wife doesn't have to deal with that by herself. So I'll jump in, but stay tuned to the channel, to my socials, and I'll get that scheduled out, so everybody kind of knows when it is. Then we'll watch the game Saturday, and then Monday come back and do this what just happened all over again. So until Friday night, whenever I talk to y'all again, go Big Red, Husker, Big Red Nation. Let's go. Let's get another win. Until then, see you guys.